Hi, Subhash here from Autophiles. Last year I gave you a list of all the Chinese car brands that were operating in Malaysia as of 2024. Right now it's right past Chinese New Year 2025, and I thought I'd give you an update on all the electric vehicles for sale in Malaysia as of now. So if you're starting 2025 looking for a EV to buy, here's your options. I'll go from cheapest to most expensive. In part 1, I think I'll stop around 155,000 ringgit, and then in part 2 we'll go a bit beyond that. So let's begin. In my sheet I have kind of put out columns for how much power you're getting per ringgit spent, or rather like how much RM per PS. So you pay like 1,000 ringgit for this much horsepower, and also how much RM per newton meter of torque. So you're paying how many thousand or how many hundred ringgit per newton meter of torque. And these are, there's a bug on my glasses. So these are good indicators of how much performance you're getting out of your ringgit, so how much value you're getting out of this car. There's also another metric which is ringgit spent per kilometer of range, and I've tried to convert all the electric vehicles range to WLTP because that is the most common and conservative estimate for range for electric vehicles. A lot of them will still use the NEDC cycle. I think BYD uses a lot of NEDC cycle on their cars, GWM as well, but it's not as stringent as WLTP. And there's also the Chinese standard, which is CLTC, and yeah, that's even more generous with how much range it assumes you can do. In Malaysian conditions, you have to assume the worst, because one, your climate control is running overtime to keep the cabin cool, and a lot of these EVs have like panoramic sunroofs, so they are working a lot harder than in European and Chinese markets. The other factor is that in our heat, battery health is also affected. Now, I'm not sure if it directly reduces the range per charge or over time if it affects battery health, this kind of heat. But you have to assume the worst for range. So WLTP is the most common. I think EPA, the American standard, is a little bit more stringent than WLTP, but not a lot of cars are run with the EPA standard because they're not really sold in the US. None of the Chinese cars, I think, on this list are sold in the US. Okay, let's start with the cheapest, the BYD Dolphin standard range. This is cheap, 999,900, quote unquote cheap. It's not really that cheap, especially when you convert from the China price. It's just that there's an artificial limit here, so they can't sell it any cheaper than this. If you can get it for a big discount, I think it's okay as a town driver, but things you have to watch out for is that the basic model is not as good value for money as the higher tier model. So don't get the standard one, spend about 25,000 extra and get the higher tier Dolphin, because your range goes up and the amount of ringgit you're paying per kilometer of range also goes up. So it's worth upgrading if you're going to get a Dolphin. The only issue with the Dolphins is the charging times are really slow, and they're kind of small cars, so if you have to have one EV that does everything, Dolphin is a little bit of a risk. I wouldn't say a risk, but it's not that great lah. Next, you have the Neta V. Neta V in Thailand is very popular. I think I've seen it go for like the equivalent of 50,000 ringgit with the charger included in Thailand, but because in Malaysia you have this artificial 100,000 barrier, it is priced at 100,000, and I would not buy this car under almost any circumstance. I've seen, we've all seen the news of one catching fire. I don't think it will happen to every single buyer, but the real crux is that it is really a budget car, and the parent company, Hozon, was going through some trouble. And when it comes to these EVs, there's so many brands on this list that I've never heard of before or very new. So if the parent company is already going through trouble and you're not selling a super appealing product, it's really a gamble, and you have to ask yourself if you want to take on that risk. Neta has another product on this list which is slightly more appealing, but the Neta V is the cheapest here. If someone gives it to you for free or you win it in a contest, then maybe I would keep it, but I would not spend money on this car. Third on the list is actually a Dongfeng Box. I think there are a couple of variants, the E2 and the E3. The E2 is cheaper at exactly 100,700, so not exactly 100,000, but they have that 700 ringgit to play with. To be honest, I've not touched or driven the Dongfeng Box before, but from what I can tell, it is an okay product. The only issues are that the range is not that great. It's like less than 300 kilometers by WLTP standards, and the charging speed is abysmal, 3.3 kilowatt for this base model. So I would skip this base model. It's only there to get that pricing of 100,700 out of the way. Yeah, so as you can see, like the top 3 cheapest EVs are not great value because they really cut back on the AC charging speeds. And the basic thing you have to understand about AC charging is that if it's less than 7 kilowatts, so 7 kilowatts or less, it's basically very slow. If you have a charger at home with a 7 kilowatt AC charger, it's going to take you half a day to fully charge your vehicle. Should I actually go through all of this? Yeah, I should. This is going to be a very long video, but I have a cutoff at 6:30 maybe I can stretch it to 640, so half an hour to do this video. Next on the list is actually a pretty good buy. So this is where I think the cars start to get a little bit better. It's the MG4 standard. So the MG4 comes in, I think, 4 variants, and the standard is the cheapest at 104,000 odd ringgit. This is actually the worst of the variants. Obviously, they all kind of are at this price point. Of the vehicles that I've listed so far, this top 4, right? This one is only about 4,000 above the baseline of 100k, but immediately you're getting 170 PS. The others have all given you less than 100 PS, and immediately you're getting 250 Newton meters of torque, whereas the others have only given you 180 to 160 Newton meters. So you're getting a lot more performance per ringgit. On top of that, the other cars just now, they would have given you like a 0 to 100 time in about 11 seconds, 12 seconds. They're not that fast. This car can get you 0 to 100 in 7.5 seconds, so you're getting real performance for 100 plus thousand ringgit. On top of that, the range is 350 kilometers on WLTP cycle, which is very impressive. Charging speed, the AC is a little bit, it's the same as the rest, like 7 kilowatts. But the DC fast charging is decent. It's 117 kilowatts. So here you're already getting a lot more value for money, and the battery as well is 51 kilowatt hours. The others have all been below 45 kilowatt hours. So this is where you're starting to get a lot of value for money. So I think MG did a very good job, and their margins are pretty small, I think, from what what Bo has done with his research. MG4, even the standard one, I think is worth getting. I saw one come up used for something like 70 or 80,000 ringgit. If you can snatch a used MG4, someone maybe bought the standard one and wants to upgrade, you get that with some depreciation baked in. As long as the warranty is decent, I think it's a decent buy. You know, your daily commute EV can be an MG4 standard, not bad. Next up, you're getting the recently launched Aion ES, and the Aion ES I think only comes in one variant, and it's 107,000 ringgit. This car, less power than the MG4 just now that I mentioned, but is there anything going for it? Yeah, the range is slightly more. The looks are a little bit more conservative, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the equipment is not as wow as the MG4. I've not driven this car yet. The charging speed doesn't look as good as the MG4, but if you want a sedan shape that is good value, I think this is a good alternative to the MG4 standard edition. Oh, big burp. Sixth place, we have the BYD M6, the standard edition. Driven this is 110,000 ringgit, so we still haven't even gone past 110,000. This is 109,800. This one you don't have to really look at the specs too much. It's pretty good performance, 160 horsepower, 310 Newton meters of torque. It's a 10-second car, so it's quick off the line. The range is okay, 350 odd kilometers of range. This is really good value because the M6 gives you 5+2 seating. So the 2 seats at the back are a little bit small. In fact, even the middle row, when I tried to sit in the middle row, it was a little bit tight for me. I had to adjust my driver's seat position just to fit comfortably in the middle row. This M6, the reason I think why it's so aggressively priced is because the chassis actually comes from the BYD E6, which is not an EV. So it was a petrol or hybrid car that was converted to electric by BYD after the fact. So because of that, when you get into the car, you start to notice that the way it's laid out, the platform, you know, the batteries being under the chassis, all of that doesn't feel optimal. You know, it says, you know, it's got space illustrated on the C or D pillar, I think. And you can tell that the space is actually what it struggles with. The packaging is not ideal for an EV. So it is a decent car if, let's say, you want to have one car that does everything, just in case you need to move like your kids or somebody else's kids in the back most seats once in a while, or if you need to like move furniture, move big barang once in a while, you can fold down all the seats at the back and then you have a huge space. So if you're like the Alza kind of buyer, I was an Alza owner once, it's very versatile as a vehicle. So if you're going to have one EV that does all your daily runabout stuff, this car, the M6, is a decent option. I wouldn't say it's a great one car garage thing, but one EV garage for a middle class kind of setup, it's okay lah. It's very taxi-like. The ambition is not really there, but it ticks all the boxes and it's good enough, I would say. And that price is very aggressive. I can't complain about this car. Number 7 is the Proton e.MAS 7 Prime. I did an article about this, how the Prime variant was probably a piece of e-waste. The e.MAS is e-waste. I think that was the name of the article. I mean, as you can see, like some of the earlier, I think the top 3 before the MG4, they were all kind of e-waste as well, because they're not really quite there in terms of range and performance. But those are imported cars from China, and it's like these Chinese manufacturers, they're just throwing everything just to try to get your attention, right? So I can't really blame them. Whereas Proton is Proton, you know. They had the chance to sit down with Geely and really discuss price and value and spec and all that. And after waiting so long, they were so late to the game compared to all the other Chinese brands, and they came up with a Prime variant that doesn't really wow so much, especially when you consider the premium variant, which is how many thousand? It's only about 10k plus difference from the Prime variant, and you're getting so much more range. and you're getting so much more equipment. It's almost like they don't want you to buy the Prime. 109,800. You get more performance than the BYD M6, but you don't get that extra row of seats. I have to say though, the platform is a lot more modern in the e.MAS, and the range is about the same as the BYD M6. So between the BYD M6 base model and the e.MAS base model, I would say if you have fewer requirements to move things around, get the e.MAS, even though it is a kind of e-waste. But if you just need one EV that does everything, I think the BYD M6 is a much better buy. But either of these cars, I think you're getting a much better deal if you step up in the variant. But moving on to the next car, which is also another Dongfeng Box. This time it's the E3 spec. You're still getting a very weak motor, less than 100 PS of power, and the top speed is 140 kilometers because of this weak power. But the battery now, instead of 271 kilometers, you're getting 353 kilometers of range. Charging is still pretty bad, 6.6 kilowatts, so hard to recommend the Dongfeng Boxes. They are okay. I think the design, the presentation is pretty good. If you want something compact that is maybe not a GWM Good Cat, maybe the Good Cat thing doesn't work for you, you want to have a Dongfeng Box for one reason, whatever reason. I think the box actually does look a little bit better in some places than versus the Good Cat. And the pricing is very similar now, so maybe there's some reasons to get the Dongfeng Box. Maybe if you're affiliated with Pekema, then you should get the box, but otherwise it's very, very hard to justify the existence of the Dongfeng Box. Next is the Ora Good Cat. I was just mentioning it just now. This is the discounted price. It is now 114,500 for the 400 Pro variant. This was actually the first Chinese EV to be launched in Malaysia, and it launched much more expensive than this. I don't know, there's a lot of mixed reviews about the Ora Good Cat. I personally thought it drove okay, it drove pretty well. In fact, I couldn't spot any mistakes from the driving experience. It was fun, it was capable, enough power, I would say. 145 horsepower and 210 Newton meters of torque is enough for you to enjoy, for sure. Charging speed is a little bit slow, but it's funky looking and it has spelling mistakes in the menus like a Porsche. But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's a funky looking thing. If you need a fashion statement, small EV, I think this is not bad. Moving on, we have the Aion Y Plus Elite spec. There's also a premium spec, but the Elite spec is the one that comes in at 120,000. This is actually a surprising vehicle. It's actually quite fast, 204 horsepower, 225 Newton meters of torque. It's a little bit faster actually than the basic Ora Good Cat, and it actually drives pretty well. It's a brisk car. I wouldn't say it's a fast or fun car, but it's brisk, and you don't feel like it's a sports car, but you don't feel like it's stopping you from driving fast. It's a really nice car as well. It's one of the few cheap EVs that I wouldn't feel ashamed of bringing my parents around, bringing important-ish people around. Not that it's premium or luxurious or anything, it's just comfortable. It's a very tall ceiling car, so you kind of just glide in, and the back doors open really wide. They open like all the way, like 90 degrees, I think. So yeah, it's very comfortable. It's very taxi spec in some ways, but comfort is the name of the game with the Y Plus, and the speed is okay. It's just the charging is kind of mediocre. 6.6 kilowatt AC charging and 80 kilowatt DC. What is the point of buying this over the higher spec model? I think it's just a spec thing. Yeah, so if you want to save money, just get the basic Y Plus Elite. I think it's got most of the boxes ticked. I didn't really note all the equipment stuff that you're missing out on, but if the core itself is convincing, then you can save some money and get this for 119,800. Yeah, Aion Y Plus gets my Aion Y Plus, I should say, gets my thumbs up of approval. Next, we have the Neta X. Also haven't driven this. It's 120,000 ringgit. I'm not sure where I stand with this car. It's less powerful than the Aion Y Plus that is cheaper than this. And yeah, but the looks are pretty interesting. I've seen this on the road a couple of times. The range is not that good, 340 kilometers. How to stomach that kind of range, man? But yeah, it does look pretty interesting. Yeah, I don't know, Neta is a bit of a question mark for me, based on who is distributing the cars here, and based on the fact that Hozon, the parent company, is on shaky ground. The product itself, the specs don't wow me at this price. There are better options, but it does look nice compared to the Neta V. It's a better car, but it's not that great lah. Moving on, this is 12th place. We're back with BYD, the M6. This is the extended version, so you get more range. You get a bit more equipment, if I'm not mistaken. Power is also bumped up, so you get 204 horsepower here. It's a 8.6 second car. I think it's good enough. This is the variant that I actually tested. Yeah, so if you need that one car that does it all, this car costs a little bit more than the other variant, 124,000, but I think it's worth upgrading to. Next is back again to the Proton e.MAS. This is the premium version, e.MAS 7. I think it's mostly is it a range thing? Yeah, it's a range thing. So you get 410 kilometers of range on this model. 11 kilowatt AC charging as well, just like on the basic e.MAS. But there are other equipment pieces that they reserved just for this variant. So if you can afford 124,000, yeah, if you can afford that price, just go up and get that variant. And I'm pretty sure that's the more popular variant at the moment. Okay, 14th place. We're getting back to the Dolphin, another variant of the Dolphin, also 125,000. I don't know how to recommend the Dolphin now that the e.MAS is around, because performance-wise they are about the same, range-wise they are about the same, and the e.MAS can charge a little bit faster. It has 11 kilowatt AC and 100 kilowatt DC, so that's faster than the BYD Dolphin 7 and 80 kilowatt fast charging. So the Dolphin after the e.MAS came out is kind of irrelevant. I don't think they will discontinue it, but I won't be surprised if they do discontinue it. But they do need that entry-level, slightly aspirational car, and the M6 is not very aspirational, so the Dolphin might stick around for that. Now we're on 15th place. So the 15th cheapest vehicle, EV, that you can buy is the MG ZS EV. I don't know why this exists. It's kind of like a wagon crossover type thing. It's a converted car, a bit like the M6, the BYD M6. So they took an SUV, an older platform, and they converted it from petrol or hybrid to EV, and they're selling it here, and it's 127,000. It is slightly better value than the MG4? It's not. It's worse range than even the basic MG4. So I don't know why MG bothered with the ZS. Maybe if you really just want a conservative looking MG electric vehicle, then this is the one for you. But yeah, I can't really recommend it, and I also haven't driven it yet, and I'm not sure how hard they're pushing this car, because I don't see any test cars. I don't see any actual cars being driven around, so I don't know. MG ZS, kind of meh. Next is also another Neta X variant. I don't think this X variant is any better than the other one. The range is the same. Yeah, the range is the same, the power is the same, so it's probably just the equipment bump. This is called the 400 Luxury, the other one is called the 400 Comfort. I would kind of stay away from this, even though it's kind of cheap at 127,888 ringgit. It's not the best of the best. Now we're going back to MG4, and this is the Lux variant at 130,000 ringgit. What does this say? This brings the range up to 435 kilometers, which is very respectable. Yeah, there are better buys right now, like the BYD M6 that is slightly cheaper, has more seats and more range. Yeah, I don't know, after the BYD M6 came about, this version of the MG4, the Lux version, is sitting on shaky ground, especially with the Proton that's a little bit cheaper and very similarly equipped in terms of spec. Oh my god, only at number 18. Okay, number 18, Aion Y Plus Premium, 136,000. It's not screaming great value. I would rather get the basic model, unless there's some equipment on this that I'm forgetting about. The Aion Plus is pretty good, like I mentioned before, for carrying older folks in. It's got a lot of space in the back, tall ceiling, good, I like. There's another variant of the Neta X. Yeah, this is the 500 Luxury, so finally we're getting a bump up in terms of range. So even though it says 500 Luxury, I think that's a CLTC or NEDC readout. The range is actually 410 kilometers around there on the WLTP cycle. So this one, I don't know, if you like the looks, this is probably the only Neta X you should get because of the range. Again, Neta X, I don't want to say anything else. It's not particularly great value, just is a little bit different, a little bit funky. Yeah, moving on. Ora Good Cat 500 Ultra with the discounted price of 144,500. Yeah, this one is the version of the Good Cat you should get because of the range. WLTP conversion, it's around 420 kilometers of range. It's decent lah. I mean, nothing to shout about. I think because it had such a first mover advantage, when it came out it would have been okay, but everyone was too scared to buy EVs back then. And then by the time BYD came out with the Atto 3, the Good Cat started to look like bad value. So yeah, I don't know. It's funky looking. I like how it looks. I like the attitude. I like the spelling mistakes. Maybe this one used for like 70,000-80,000 might be worth it, but pardon me, I have to scratch my armpits once in a while. Up to you whether you like this kind of stuff or not. Chery Omoda E5. I did a likes and dislikes about this car. 147,000. They have big discounts now. This actually uses a BYD battery, and it's slightly better than the Atto 3 in terms of spec, but I didn't like the driving characteristics. It's okay lah, you know, in some aspects it's okay, but you really have to ignore all the other options on this list, particularly the BYD M6 and the Proton e.MAS 7 for this car to make a lot of sense. Omoda E5, the biggest thing it has going for it is the looks, especially if you get the CBU China version, because the CBU China version has that nice blue and white interior. But if not for the looks, there's nothing in this car that really stands out. But okay range, 430 kilometers of range, WLTP. Power is pretty good, but clumsy delivery. You go watch the likes and dislikes, I'm sure you can search for it. Maybe you're a big fan of Chery, so that's a reason to buy it. Moving on, we're getting to the second best version of the MG4. So MG4 was featured at the top of the list, and it's still being featured because there's 4 variants. This is the third variant that we've talked about yet. This is the Lux Extended. So this is the version which has the longest range. WLTP conversion, 520 kilometers of range for 150,000 ringgit. That is the number one reason to buy this car. And if I do kilometers, ringgit per kilometer of range, this is still up there. This is the top 5. Sorry, it's the 4th best. You're paying 288 ringgit per kilometer of range that you're getting out of this vehicle. It's pretty exceptional, not the best, but it's the highest range for the least amount of money. It's a very good metric, just trust me, bro. It's good value for range. This is the one EV you can buy and drive maybe 3 or 4 days in a week before you think about charging. This is the MG4 that I would personally recommend to people to buy. But at 150,000, it's a little bit expensive, but you are getting something out of it. You're getting some value out of it. So MG4 Lux Extended should be on your radar. Next up, we have the BYD Atto 3 Extended Range 2024 update. Now, it's really difficult to track the updates with the Atto 3 because BYD's information and marketing push is so inconsistent, and getting proper information is a little bit difficult. Sometimes the website says one thing and then you go on another website and it says another thing, and then the news report will be something else and the press release will be something else. But it's also 150,000. Slightly less performance than the MG4 that we just mentioned. But nothing. The range is also worse, 420 kilometers, and charging is slower, 7 kilowatt versus the MG4, and it's 11 kilowatt, the previous version. And the charging is slightly worse at 7 kilowatt versus MG4 Lux Extended's 11 kilowatt. Even the DC fast charging is not as fast as the previous car that we mentioned. So yeah, there's nothing about the BYD Atto 3 that is appealing in 2025, even though it continues to be one of the best selling EVs. I don't know why, it's such a meh EV. Moving on, we have the Zeekr X premium rear wheel drive. We're only at 156,000 ringgit and we're already touching a car that is close to being premium. And I think I'm going to make this the last vehicle on this list. It's basically, the cutoff point is 155. Okay, we'll stop it there. This is 155, 800. My throat is so itchy and I've been sick the whole week, so anyway. So you're getting a lot of performance out of this car. It's rear wheel drive, but it's 272 PS horsepower, 343 Newton meters of torque. It's a 5.6 second car to 100. It's very, very fast. Range is 440 kilometers, which is decent. The only issue is the charging speed is a bit slow, 7 kilowatt odd, and 150 kilowatt DC is pretty fast. So if you want a performance car or premium aspirations out of your EV and you don't want to spend too much, I think the Zeekr X base model is a very, very good option. So that's it. That is my first part of all the EVs available in Malaysia as of February 13th, 2025. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode where we go from list number 25 to 50, I guess. I don't know, we'll cut it off when I start to cough. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.